So what I want to share with you is an insight, if you will, that I saw or that I heard in a podcast episode. This was from Monique DeBose, and it was the 21st Century Creative was the name of the podcast, and the person being interviewed is Monique DeBose. She's an incredible vocal artist. She happens to also be the wife of the co-author of the book, The Prosperous Coach, Rich Litvin. And many of you know that I am working with Rich to potentially hire him as my coach for the next year. For those of you who have been following along in the journey, my next scheduled call with him is tomorrow evening, Tuesday evening, September 10th. I'll be sure to let you know in the podcasts that I produce moving forward from here exactly how that went. But I was listening. He posted that his wife was interviewed on this podcast. Yeah. So anyway, this is the artwork for the particular podcast, by the way. And if you're looking for it, there's a link to it in the video description. But it's this idea of walking away. The idea of walking away. And to set this up, I want to kind of give you one little story of something that happened recently. Somebody had joined the Next Level Mastermind, and I'm looking at the wrong camera. I gotta, let me see if I can hide that camera because I was distracted by it. I'm talking to you guys. Anyway, I was talking to somebody in the Next Level Mastermind, and he was telling me about the fact that, I just kind of just have lost all passion for my podcast, quite frankly. I can't get myself to record new episodes, and I don't know what to do about it. I mean, I just can't think of new ideas for new content. I've been doing this almost at 100 episodes, and I just, whatever. And I'm like, you want to know my advice? And he says, yeah, I'd love to know how you can help me. I said, shut it down. Walk away. I didn't use the phrase walk away, but I literally said shut it down. Whenever somebody tells me, I seem to have lost passion for whatever it is, I'm like, shut it down. Stop it. Go do something different with your life. Go find something that you feel drawn to do, something you feel compelled to do. Devote your life to things that make you come alive, that give you a sense that this is what I'm meant to do. And in a way that really at a deep down inside level that really appeals to your true identity. All right? And of course, I told this person, and I've done this several times in the past. Some folks, by the way, when I tell them this, they shut down their podcast completely. I say, you may or may not want to record one more episode to tell people that it's over. We're done here. It's completely up to you. But I've had people who I've given this advice to, and they walked away. They shut it down, never to return to podcasting. And they went and did something else that brought more fulfillment and more passion into their life. Now, the thing is, though, is that's on the very rare occasion. Some people, when they heard the advice, it's like, well, that sounds like a reasonable thing to do since I have zero passion for this thing. And when it actually came time for them to walk away, they couldn't bring themselves to do it. And that's exactly what happened most recently with this person in the Next Level Mastermind. It turned out that I gave him the advice of shut it down. If that's the way you feel about it, just stop doing it. And when he contemplated the idea of that, he realized that, no, this is way too important to me. And the thought of walking away was all that was necessary for him to rediscover why he launched the podcast in the first place. And well, this was about a month ago. He's not missed an episode since. And in fact, unfortunately, he started producing multiple episodes per week, but that's a whole nother story for another time. But the idea is that if you can walk away from something, then just walk away from it. And I'm going to play for you this audio clip from this podcast. In fact, I'm going to bring up a little image right here on the screen, Voicing Your Truth with Monique DeBose. And I'm going to play for you this audio clip from the podcast episode. It's just 1 minute long. Here's what happened in the conversation in the podcast.
I mean, it sounds like a very brave thing to do to step into this context. Were you not just tempted to leave these things for someone else to say while you just got on with your music?
I couldn't get on. That was the problem. Trust me, if I've said this, I had a teacher once who said, she was teaching what she was doing, and I was learning from her. And she said, Monique, if you can walk away from this, walk away. And I could walk away from it, so I did. And I kind of never understood why she said that.
Mm-hmm.
But this, I'm like, oh, this is my thing. If I could walk away from this, I would 100% walk away from it. But I can't. I feel like it's the charge my soul has been given to really integrate all of the parts of myself, which also includes integrating all of the parts of this country, because that is what I'm made from. I just feel like that's been imprinted on my soul, and that's what I have to do. But trust me, if I could walk away, Mark, I would be on a beach.
I love that. If she could walk away from what it is that she is doing right now, she would walk away in a heartbeat and she would be on a beach somewhere. That's what she said. But she can't walk away from the work that she's doing right now. As challenging as it may be to her, the reality is that she is drawn to it. If you want to listen to the full interview and hear about the work that she's doing, that she can't walk away from, like I said, in the description to this video, to this live stream, there's a link to the full podcast episode. I encourage you to listen to it. It's a great episode. But I love this advice that she received from a teacher long ago. If you can walk away from this, walk away. And I think this is such a valuable concept in life. If you don't understand this principle of just shutting things down, I will tell you, shutting things down and walking away from them can free you to pursue things that make you come alive. If you have the ability to shut something down and you can walk away and you feel a sense of relief from doing it, I can tell you right now, you have just wiped out something in your life that has been keeping you from going to that next level of success, in that next level of fulfillment, that next level of discovering, embracing, and living fully alive in your true identity. All right? So she says, listen, this was the charge my soul was given. Have you discovered that work yet? Have you discovered the charge for which your soul was given? Do you feel that you're drawn to putting something into the world? What is it in this world that you feel most called to create? That there's just no way you could even consider walking away? One of the ways to find out is to do lots of things. Anytime you start getting excited about something, you want to pursue something new, why not give it a shot? Do it. So many people are afraid to start something because they're afraid that's going to pigeonhole them into something. It's like, I don't want to always be known as this. Well, you can just shut it down and walk away. Anything that you do. There are so many things that I've done in my life that I get so excited about, and I pursue it with everything I've got until, quite frankly, I just don't feel led to do it anymore. And then I walk away. The biggest thing that people don't know is that there was a time when it was suggested that I should walk away from creating podcast content myself. It was the best advice anyone had ever given me. It was also the worst advice. And I'm going to share with you this story. Many of you don't know this, but there was a time I was a part of this ministry program. I was pastoring small groups, I was pastoring over small group leaders in a ministry setting, and I was full-time employed as an insurance agent, still working back in insurance. This is before January 2008. And I was podcasting about 15, 20 hours a week outside of my day job, which was about 40 to 60 hours a week most of the time. And I was doing ministry on top of that in whatever free time I had left as well. And the reality is that I started to see this podcasting stuff as way more ministry, way more impact and influence in the world through the ministry that I felt called to do than the official ministry work that I was doing. And one day I suggested to some leaders in the congregation that I was a part of that, hey, why don't we have a podcast for our church? And the leader said, well, we've got that on our radar, but when we do that, we want to do it with excellence. So thanks for the offer, Cliff, but when we're ready, we'll find somebody to help us with that. Okay. Fair enough. I get where you're coming. I'm picking up what you're laying down. The reality is it wasn't that they didn't see that I was qualified to help the congregation create a podcast. And quite frankly, it was before I was known as the Podcast Answer Man. It was before I even launched Podcast Answer Man, the podcast, in December 2006. But here's what I will tell you, though, is they said, Cliff, we want to talk to you. And it was there were two individuals, and they wanted to have an intervention with me. So we noticed that, Cliff, you have a stay-at-home wife that takes care of your 3 young children. You have a full-time day job. You have a ministry position here, which, by the way, this is a non-paid ministry position. I'm not officially on staff. I'm just doing this on a volunteer basis. But quite frankly, they understood that my desire was that one day I would do full-time ministry. That I felt like that was my calling, and it was something that I was trying to pursue. What that might look like, where it might look, I don't know, but certainly I felt like the work that I was doing on a voluntary basis, leading leaders of small groups or pastoring these leaders of small groups, I figured that was a part of it. And they said, Cliff, we would love to give you more responsibilities here in this congregation. And I won't go into the politics behind what was being said, but what I will tell you is that they felt like that I needed an intervention. They said, Cliff, we want to say some words to you, and we want you to carefully weigh what we're about ready to say. All of this podcasting stuff, it seems to me like this is a distraction from what God has truly called you to do. I mean, we know how much you work in the insurance business with your family. We know how much your time, effort, and energy you're putting into the ministry here. But then there's this podcasting stuff that you're doing. I mean, when do you have time for your wife? When do you have time for your kids? We're kind of concerned if we want you to ask yourself, are you being distracted from the work that God has called you to do in this world? Is there something that you need to say no to? Now, in a way, what they were suggesting is that, Cliff, perhaps you need to think about walking away from podcasting. Yeah. Now, many of you don't know this story. Some of you do. Some of you have heard this. But the reality is that intervention hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, man. And of course, I respected these folks very much. I really did. And I thought that they had my best interests at heart. And I know that they went into this conversation with my best interest at heart. And so I weighed what they said, and I felt like, you know what, this ties into a little bit of some kind of stuff, a little guilt and shame that I've been feeling about maybe this is just for vanity purposes and all this other stuff. And who am I to think that, people are going to be interested in this? And what, maybe this is a distraction. I have found myself sometimes distracted at my day job, the insurance work, by answering emails and communicating with people, outlining next podcast episodes. I think these guys might be right. And basically that evening, I made the decision that I was going to walk away from podcasting forever. And I did. Shut it all down. And what happened was, that was on a Sunday. And Monday, I went into work. I showed up just like barely before I had to be there, which is not like me. I usually showed up very early to work. But I showed up just before I had to be there. And I had never experienced depression before in my life, as far as I know. I'd never experienced depression. And all of a sudden, I had no passion, no zeal, and I felt like everything worth living for had been taken from me. And all I could think about was, how many hours are there in this day before I can go home and lay down in my bed and become unconscious to this world that I live in? Seriously, it's not how many hours before I can go home and see my family, how many hours before I can go home and go to bed so I don't feel the mind-numbing pain of what I've just given up. Podcasting, communicating with my voice to the world. And that was my day every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, And I was like, man, this is terrible. And then I realized it's like, I can't live like this. And I never got to the point where it's like, it's like, man, life isn't worth living. But the reality was, it's like, I don't care what anybody says. I've got a podcast. And so I started I didn't make it a full week, but I had the podcast. I had to create content. And what happened was I went in the very next Sunday to the two individuals and I said, hey, I want you to know I've had a lot of time to think about and pray about what you guys said last week. And I want to give you an update on how things have gone. I said, you guys were absolutely right. And I'm so thankful that you came to me. In essence, the takeaway that I had from our conversation last week is that you were wondering if I've been distracted by anything that has been keeping me from fully stepping into what God is calling me to do next with my life. And I have been distracted a lot, way too much. And you guys suggested that I should pray about if there's something maybe I need to stop doing. And I'll use the language today. Is there something that I need to walk away from? And I've discovered that there is. And so after an entire week of evaluating my life, what I've been up to, what God's been speaking to me, what God has been showing me, and about who I am and where I'm going in life, I'm absolutely convinced after a week of prayer that it's time to walk away from this place. Effective immediately, I resign my leadership of the small group leaders in this congregation, and my family and I are actually going to find another congregation to be a part of. And we walked out. It was very clear that I was not getting any support of what God's true gifting and calling was for me. And I said I left out a lot of the details there. There was a bit of judgment and some other things that were a part of it. It was that. But the whole idea here is the purpose of telling you this story is this. If you can walk away from something, then walk away. And don't feel any guilt or shame or anything else. The reality is walk away. One of the things, when I'd made the decision to quit my day job as an insurance agent and walk into this unknown world of full-time self-employment, I thought my dad was going to freak out and talk me out of it. In fact, I was kind of hoping he would. But I went in that next day after making the decision. I was going to put my 90-day notice in. And I said to my dad, Dad, I'm leaving the family business. I know that everything's all set up for me to take over the business when you retire or if anything were to happen to you, but I can't do this work anymore. I want to devote myself full time to the work that I've been doing on the internet through this podcasting stuff. And I don't have a clue what it all looks like long term, but I do know that I've been able to make some money, $3,000 to $5,000 a month, just doing it on the side. And I believe that if I was to devote myself to it fully, I could find a way to provide for my family. And this is what I want to do. And then I finally sat there in front of my dad, actually sitting in I sat there in a chair right across from his desk, and I was just waiting for him to tell me. He's like, "Are you crazy?" I was waiting for him to say, "Do you know what you're giving up? Have you ever considered?" I was waiting for this, right? And do you want to know what he said? He goes, "I have been waiting for months for you to come here and tell me that you are ready to leave this place." It's clear this isn't where your heart is. It's clear that your soul was not charged to do insurance work. Now, he didn't use that language, but I'm pulling it from Monique's audio clip from that podcast interview. He goes, "Let me tell you something. You can walk away from here." And if you and he didn't say this exactly, but in a way, this is what he says. If you can walk away from this, walk away. That's what my dad said. He said, he goes, "Here's what I want to tell you. You've got to go. And I want you to know that if you find out it's not for you and you want to come back, you can always come back here." That's what my dad said. He says, you can always come back. If you can walk away, walk away. But if you can't, then come back and let's pick it up where you left off. But he said, here's the one thing I'll tell you is that if you don't walk away and you just stay here and you're just afraid to walk away, you'll be living a life of regret at some point down the road. You'll be asking yourself this question: what if I would have done that? What if? He says, get rid of the what ifs. Go, walk away. Yeah. So there's so many different areas of my life that you guys have seen. Walk away from your insurance career. If you can walk away from the performance-based, guilt-driven leadership of traditional ministry in some cultures of performance-based structured Christianity, if you can walk away from that, walk away. If you can walk away from your podcast content creation, walk away. See how much of it is truly something you're meant to do. If you walk away and you feel like some part of you has just died, then you know. But sometimes we're just afraid to walk away because, well, what we're doing now is what we've always done. It's what's known to us. So my suggestion is, if you want to find out what charge your soul has been given, and if you want to find a way, and I love what she said again, she said, integrating all of who I am, is what you're doing into maybe some of the reason why maybe you've lost passion for your podcast is because you're creating content for other people instead of for yourself. Maybe you've been given the advice that you need to be creating content for other people. That find a problem that the world has and then give them a solution to that problem. That's the advice, right? Now, Howard Thurman, he was a civil rights leader in the 60s, religious icon. I don't know much about him other than the fact that that's what his bio on Wikipedia says. And he also is attributed with this quote: don't ask what the world needs. Instead, ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go and do that. Because what the world needs most are people who have come alive. And so if it's your podcast and you've lost your passion for it, then consider walking away. Walk away from it. And if a little part of you dies and you say, okay, I've got to do something. No, I have to create content. Well, if you want to know how to get back into the passion, incorporate all of who you are into it. Stop creating content for other people. I used to create this show. It was called The Podcast Answer Man. And gosh, I think it was Podcast Answer Man for over 450, 500 episodes. And then one day I made the decision, you know what? It's the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. And I'm going to start talking about anything and everything I want to talk about. I really don't care if you don't like what I share. I don't. I'm creating this show for me. And you know what? That show, when I had it as the Podcast Answer Man, was averaging about 15,000 subscribers for every single download of every podcast episode. And within 90 days, it dropped down to just over 3,000. Today, it's back up to right around 5,000, and that's awesome. But I lost 2/3 of my audience when I decided to become all of who I am. And you know what? Things have been okay. I'm going to play this audio clip for you one more time. Listen to this.
I mean, it sounds like a very brave thing to do to step into this context. Were you not just tempted to leave these things for someone else to say while you just got on with your music?
I couldn't get on. That was the problem. Trust me, if I've said this, I had a teacher once who said, she was teaching what she was doing and I was learning from her. And she said, Monique, if you can walk away from this, walk away. And I could walk away from it. So I did. And I kind of never understood why she said that. Mm-hmm. But this, I'm like, oh, this is my thing. If I could walk away from this, I would 100% walk away from it. But I can't. I feel like it's the charge my soul has been given to really integrate all of the parts of myself, which also includes integrating all of the parts of this country, because that is what I'm made from. I just feel like that's been imprinted on my soul, and that's what I have to do. But trust me, if I could walk away, Mark, I would be on a beach.
Well, there you go, my friends. That's the message I want to share with you tonight. I want you to go away from this video and ask yourself, is there something that I need to walk away from? And if you can walk away from it, walk away. Talk to you soon. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level. Bye-bye.